You're listening to another episode of the Coaster101 podcast. I'm Andrew Stillwell, and after a several months hiatus, I am pleased to welcome back, as I bow down to his greatness, our California correspondent, Eric Woolley. Eric, welcome back to the Coaster101 podcast.
That was very flattering. Thank you, Andrew. I'm happy to be here. You just need to invite me more, and I will be on more often.
I will say you were an original podcast co-host. If you go to coaster101.com/podcast, you'll see the learn more about our hosts. And I think Eric is listed first. And
yeah, probably.
Yeah,
I didn't have a job. It was much easier for me to do this when I didn't have a job. Also, because I could record earlier in the day on any day.
This is true. Yeah, this East Coast, West Coast thing we've got working right now, it does make for some difficult recording times. But again, I thank you for gracing us with your presence. And I will invite, there's always an open invitation if you want to come back.
All right. Got to think of things to talk about. Speaking of which, what are we talking about today, Andrew?
That is... What a segue. It's like you're a pro at this. But obviously we are going to talk the big announcements from America's second favorite regional theme park chain. And by America's, I mean my second favorite regional theme park chain, Six Flags. March 1st, they had a good number of announcements kind of across the board. Traditionally, this is something in the past that's taken place, late August, early September, sometime around National Roller Coaster Day. Sometimes it's been in the past. This year, it happened on March 1st, and that was the day before their Q4 it had to have been Q4 2022 earnings calls. So if you follow the business of this industry, there's probably a reason for that, but people seem bullish. The stock went up, I think. I don't know. This isn't a stock podcast, but we're going to cover some of the new attractions coming to the greater Six Flags chain in 2023. And we're going to start with the attraction that was announced first. And so
should clarify that these were all, a lot of these this was not their first announcement. In this announcement, I think most of what we'll talk about, we already knew was coming, but
some of them were. But if we want to go 1,290 days prior to this recording, and by the time it opens, it will be at 1295. It's Six Flags over Texas. We got the United States' first mock rides Power Splash. And I know John was at the park recently, and if you head to coaster101.com, you'll get to see videos and pictures of this thing in action. But Aquaman Power Wave, it is finally opening after COVID, after sitting in 2021, after sitting in 2022, and installing a turntable at some point during those times. We are finally getting the United States' first mock rides Power Splash. Eric, what do you think?
I was going to say I'd forgotten about it, but that's not true. I knew it was going, but it's nice that it is actually coming. I think, like you said, our Coaster101 founder, John Stevenson, was at the park recently and saw it testing. And I will say that, watching his videos of it testing, it does look, it's fun. It's neat. Yeah. I'm not a huge, I'm not a huge water ride person in general. And it is sort of it doesn't do that much, but it does look cool the way it goes back and then fills in the water and drops through it.
Yeah.
I think it will be fun to at least try a couple times. I could imagine it eventually. I'm glad they put the turntable in, because I imagine normally I would be like, this always has too long a line for me to ever actually want to ride it. But hopefully on at least a not too hot day.
Yeah, I think those Texas, famously known for its mild, temperate summers, I think this will do really well with the park guest who wants to be wet or cool off a little bit during the middle of their hot summer day. And I am glad that they, like you said, that they went with this turntable loading station. And obviously it doubles the capacity. It, to me, proves that Six Flags isn't just cheapening out because it's Six Flags. With no offense to Six Flags, there, they could have just let this thing sit for 3 years or a year or whatever, but they decided, let's put a little bit more capital expenditure in this. Let's do the turntable. Let's redesign the loading station, because you go back to August 29th, 2019, when this thing was announced, and that was the first thing everybody was saying was, this thing it needs the turntable like the one at Pulsar at Wallaby Holland.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're never going to get to ride it. So
yeah.
I'm glad they listened. This thing, it looks impressive, and I love these multi-pass launches. I don't know, to me, it feels a little bit of a stretch to call this a coaster, and this is coming from somebody who is a diehard credit counter to an extent. But the engineering of the kind of reservoir rapid filling and all that for the big final splashdown is really cool to see. And I saw a video, I think on TikTok, of this thing testing, and this little girl was standing like right on the fence, and the splash that comes out of this thing, not insignificant. Like, it knocked her over.
I think, well, that's hopefully that doesn't happen too often to spectators. But that was one of the things that stood out to me from watching John's videos, was the splash. I mean, it looks like a shoot splash or bigger, which I guess is not surprising considering how fast I assume that car is going, coming down into the water. But yes, I think the engineering, like, I could imagine it being fun as a roller coaster nerd to just like watch the way the water fills and drains, and like how it's doing all of this as it's going.
And you won't be the only one watching that. I mean, there's the bloggers are going to set up their camera and be like, here's the water going in and here's the water coming out. And then people are going to talk about it on a podcast, and it's going to be like, ooh, they're nerds. But yeah.
I will say,
go ahead.
Way back in 2019, I believe our colleague Nick wrote a post for Coaster101 about how it works. So assuming that hasn't changed at all in the intervening 4 years, if you want to see how it works, you can go back and Nick breaks down sort of the engineering that is going on.
That works. Yeah. I think modern technology has improved in the past 1,300 days, but maybe not that much. Who knows?
I think mostly what amuses me about the delay is that I think it was maybe going to be the third one ever when it was announced. But since that announcement, one has opened in Korea at Lottie World, and one has opened in Kazakhstan at Tets Blue theme park, called Blue Power, which I did not know there was a theme park in Kazakhstan, and they got a power splash before the United States did. So good for them.
And the good news is I'm going to save everybody my Borat impression. So
yes, thank you, Andrew.
You're welcome. This is very nice. But speaking of very nice, we got to talk these two, technically 4 new kiddie coasters, 2 coming to Six Flags Over Georgia and 2 coming to Six Flags Fiesta, Texas. Yes, we are talking about the Skyline Pescetti Bowls that will both be collectively known as Kid Flash Cosmic Coaster. And I am very excited. I mean, again, not the target demographic for a Pescetti Bowl, but anytime you can kind of get a 2-for-1 in the coaster counting game. I mean, there's 2 tracks. It's 2 credits.
This is your reason for being excited about this.
And okay, let me tell you why I'm excited. This is opening at these closest Six Flags to me, at Six Flags Over Georgia. I have not been to Six Flags Over Georgia since I was in about the 8th grade, and I'm now well into my 30s. So it's been a minute since I've been to Six Flags Over Georgia. I don't know. I take that back. I was there for an Ace event. Nothing was open. So I was there to take pictures of Twisted Cyclone under construction. Still haven't ridden it. But I haven't been to an operating Six Flags Over Georgia in close to 20 years. I don't know how that's mathing. Between 15 and 20 years, I haven't been. And I'm excited that this is coming to Six Flags Over Georgia. These things, I think, are going to be the new kiddie coaster du jour. For a while we were coming off the SBF Visa figure eights, and now to kind of even a lesser extent the hamster wheel cars. Before that, you had kind of that period of time where we had the Gravity Group wooden coasters, the little family wooden coasters, Rorosaurus and Kentucky Flyer,
Mm-hmm.
and then before that, we're talking, Zamperla Junior coasters, and before that, it was the Wacky Worm. So I think we're going to see these start popping up a lot like SBF visas were popping up in recent years. And, if a park like Tweetsy Railroad in the mountains of North Carolina can get an SBF visa, I think anywhere can build a Skyline Pescetti Bowl. And I'm really excited that Six Flags with both of these coasters went with the LED package. I'm very excited to see that it's actually going to be theming and not just Kid Flash Cosmic Coaster presented by Takis. And so you're going to ride over the Takis logo all attraction long. So I'm really glad that's not happening. But Eric, you're kind of like me. We're childless adults, and we're gonna shame ourselves in waiting in line for these. At least I am. I don't know if you are or not. You're kind of shaking your head. But what do you think about these Pescetti Bowls coming to Six Flags Fiesta Texas and over Georgia?
I think I will shame myself into waiting in line at least for one of these. I mean, I think this is, obviously they're small kiddie coasters, sort of family coasters. Is that what they're calling them?
Yeah, they're family
I think
coasters.
like 20, 25 feet tall. But like, you look at the renderings and the images of the track. I mean, we saw this, I think, when did Skyline announce these, or like announce the Pescetti Bowl at like an IAAPA?
It was prior to IAAPA they announced it, and then they had the LED system that kind of debuted at this past IAAPA.
Yeah, and so that's like, I mean, looking at the layout, I think we probably at least talked amongst ourselves back then that like it looks fun, and these racing coasters, I mean, an easy way to make a not fast coaster feel more exciting is to have it do something like this, where they're like dueling racing. You're next to another coaster and you're twisting around an extra track, and so there's like little things where head chopper-esque or like near misses, sort of. I don't know how close they'll actually be with them being family coasters, but the renderings, they certainly look like it's a very tight, twisted track. And I think that can make something that, even if it's only going 20 miles an hour or whatever, feel a lot more fun than a normal that normally would. And I think that's like, we know that Skyline had tried to do things with single rail before with they're like the Harley Quinn at Six Flags Discovery Kingdom and Tidal Twister at SeaWorld San Diego. And I think, those mixed results with those, but I think this is a good way of them continuing to try and do like, okay, they can do something with a single track and try and keep, I mean, I remember the idea with those was trying to, I think we did an interview with them maybe a long time ago, of like keeping the budget low. And so it's a more accessible ride. And I think that's, I assume, part of what goes into this is letting Six Flags put in a couple of these racing coasters that normally a racing coaster is more complicated, obviously twice as much track. Lots of them eventually stop racing, as we all know with lots of old racing coasters. So I'm assuming that hopefully it's, budget wise, it's affordable, maintenance wise, hopefully easy. Skyline, I know that we like Skyline's work on wooden coasters. They mostly GCI alums and have done work with GCI since.
Still do.
Yeah, still do. And so I think that's like, they have enough pedigree that I'm like interested to see what they're doing. And I think, yeah, these look cool. I mean, who doesn't like a twisted sort of racing coaster, whether it's West Coast Racers being the big version of this that has opened recently-ish, that's super fun, even though, again, it's not the fastest. It's certainly not tall, stay low to the ground. But, when you're going through a helix next to another coaster, it's fun.
Yeah, and they're going to cross over each other 11 times. So that's, those are your near miss head chopper moments, which I'm excited for. I think, again, if they do this right, and I have a feeling that both Six Flags and Skyline are going to do this right, I think we'll get to see more of these start to kind of pop up at other parks throughout the chain, but other parks, around the United States and around the world too. I think the kind of the demo of sorts, if we can call it that, is that Brake Run Helix exhibition at that art museum in Massachusetts. They're similar, but they're different. But that single rail track, it looks really fun, and I think, again, this thing at night too with the LED package, I think you're gonna have a lot of people just kind of stopping and looking, like a much smaller scale, like Monster Adventureland or one of those other parks with the KCL lighting package. And who knows if these are successful, then maybe we get the Skyline Trail Runner that they did unveil right before this year's IAPA, kind of that next step up, the two across and more of a terrain based coaster. So, fingers crossed. Again, and anytime you can kill a bumper cars or a Larson loop and then add 2 roller coaster credits, that's addition by subtraction. And that's how that.
I think that's a nice thing. I mean, again, obviously not the main target demographic for these rides, but I feel like some Six Flags parks are sort of lacking in the family kiddie coaster. And so being able to put them in without really taking out too much. I love bumper cars, so it's always sad to see those go. But Larson Loop, God, is this small enough that it can take over the plot of a Larson Loop at all of these parks? Who would be mad about that? I don't think it's that small, but Georgia must have had a lot of space, or whichever one's replacing the Larson Loop. There must have been a lot of extra space. Yeah, big queue for their Larson Loop.
I think so, and it's funny. Like, I've been riding now for Coaster101 for 10 years, and I remember I looked before we started recording because I was like, "This is replacing the Larson Loop at Six Flags Over Georgia." Mm-hmm. I remember writing about this, and so I went back August 28th, 2014. This was the 22-meter giant loop manufactured by Larson. It was called the Joker Chaos Coaster at Six Flags Over Georgia. So that is another ride that I have covered and has closed since I've been riding for Coaster101. And there's a handful of them out there. The submarine dive quest at SeaWorld San Diego was one. Couple of water slides at Carowinds, Dorsal Fin Drop and Surfer Swell. They're now no longer with us. So it just means I've been doing this far too long. If, there's rides that are opening and closing within my Coaster101 tenure.
I think I thought the Larson Loops were more recent additions than whatever year you said they came out in 2015.
Yeah, 2015. So 8 years.
Yeah, which I guess is not super long, but it's also not. It's not like they just opened 2 years ago. It's just that they, I think, remain a joke about Six Flags.
Also true. They're
stayed in our consciousness.
You want to talk about credit counting? They're not credits. Just saying. But on this subject of roller coasters, while we are, again, counting credits here, we're going to go to what I feel like, among coaster enthusiasts anyway, is an oft neglected park in the Six Flags chain, and that's Six Flags St. Louis. They're getting their own new coaster, and it's their first new coaster since... Trivia question, Eric. What's their last new coaster? Do you know?
I don't know. Mr. Freeze or something?
Their last new coaster, built from the ground up, believe it or not, was American Thunder in 2008.
Oh.
So it's been a minute, been 15 years since they had a ground up roller coaster at Six Flags St. Louis.
I'm not sure this is going to scratch that itch for any coaster fans in the area.
A park is opening a new roller coaster, and capital investments are good things, Eric.
This is true.
They're good things. But the Rookie Racer, it's a Formula One themed Vekoma family coaster, and according to the press release, will consist of tight turns, drops, and a 540-degree horizontal loop. And, okay, I love marketing copy as much as the next guy. Can we just call a spade and call this a helix?
I mean, horizontal loop does sound more fun than that. Maybe. Actually, I don't know. The horizontal loop sounds more fun than that to me. Also, I think a horizontal loop I would expect to be fully parallel to the ground, perpendicular to ground, however you want to call it.
Right.
Like if you're not fully 90 degrees, it's not really the same as a loop.
Yeah. Because I remember like one of the first times going back to Six Flags Over Georgia, I remember riding Mindbender, which is now Riddler Mindbender because we have to put IP on literally everything. It had the 2 vertical loops, but I remember for some reason reading in the park map or something that it had 3 loops, but the 3rd loop was this horizontal helix. I think, again, it's been years since I've ridden this coaster, but it's just like, can we just like, is the general public, the kiddie coaster riding residents of St. Louis, do they not know what the word helix means? Does that scare them? Does it frighten them? Does it overwhelm them? Like, again, all for the marketing copy, 540-degree horizontal loop. If you have to hit a word count, that's covers a lot more graphics, or, a lot more typography than the word helix.
I think it's a fair point that lots of people probably don't know what a helix is if they're just like, if you're putting this in the newspaper or on a billboard or whatever, or I guess like whatever the equivalent is now, an Instagram ad from the park.
Yeah.
Helix is probably not something that everybody knows, especially if they are a parent whose kid is supposed to get excited about this ride.
True. And I mean, F1 themed kind of Formula One, I will go out on record right now. You can come for me if you want to. I don't get the hype on F1. I don't get it. I didn't watch Drive to Survive on Netflix. I have friends who watch F1 religiously every weekend, and then I get group texts about Max Verstappen or whatever the guy's name is, and I'm like, I don't know who that is. I mean, I know who it is because you guys talk about it, but I just don't care. So
only NASCAR for Andrew, good old boy from North Carolina.
NASCAR pays a lot of my company's bills, so we're just gonna go with that. This is yeah. Companies
should start doing things for F1. Then you'd get to go to like Europe or Japan or something instead of, I don't know, rural Georgia or wherever NASCAR is.
Well, the company can go. I don't go to a lot of races. I went to a couple last year though. Yeah, anyway, but yeah, I think that capitalizing on the F1 fandom in the United States it's a solid move by Six Flags. I don't necessarily get the hype, and I don't necessarily feel like it's necessary to overly theme a kid's coaster, but
I mean, look, it's a Six Flags coaster. I don't think it's going to be very themed. The cars will look like race cars, and there will be some checkered flags on the station, right?
True.
That is the guess of what we're seeing here. I think so. It's a Vekoma. I remember you mentioned that. Yep. Vekoma. It's their 247 meter junior coaster, which I think that size there might not be any in the U.S. I think the Vekoma coaster, junior coaster, people are most familiar with would probably Fly the Hippogriff. I think it's same type of Vekoma ride, although I think it's a longer. It's one of their longer versions. Vekoma's got, I think they've got like 5 different.
Yeah, they've got
off the shelf lengths.
They have they've got 5 different off the shelf junior coasters. And you said, what was the dimensions on this that you said?
This is, according to RCDB, the 247 meter.
Yeah. So version. Those are best probably known as the Crazy Taxi Coaster. And there appears to be somewhere but almost 20 of them in Trans Studio Mini, which is in Indonesia, and
they're FECs in Indonesia, which is apparently the prime market for that version. But yeah, I don't know. This is less exciting to me than the Piscetti Bowls, but like whatever. Like you said, new roller coaster and Six Flags St. Louis. I am a little curious as to why Six Flags, if they were putting in 2 of the Piscetti Bowls, having a different family coaster opening same year, which I was like, oh, did they? Made me think like, oh, was this a contract that they'd signed earlier with Vekoma or something like that, or maybe it's cheaper than the Piscetti Bowl and they were trying to do less of an investment. It seems like your point earlier, if it seems like, oh, if these are successful, Six Flags sometimes does with like, oh, drop some of these in more parks, and so it's a little surprising that St. Louis would be getting a different family coaster the same year these other two are opening. But
Yeah. Well, when we get a Bat Kid or whatever the next junior, we're gonna theme it Bat Kid or Super Kid or whatever the what is it Supergirl? Supergirl's like the kid Superman, right?
I'm
Sure.
you are
Okay.
asking the wrong person, Andrew.
Fair.
Batgirl is a character, but I believe she's an adult.
Okay. Well, anyway, we're gonna come up with a kid themed superhero from the DC Comics universe. Before we dive into a couple of other attractions, we couldn't help but gloss over. I'm going to just mention them. Six Flags Whitewater has Caribbean Cove, a new children's aqua play structure, really good for the residents of the Atlanta area at Six Flags Whitewater. I'm assuming that's where that is. And then Hurricane Harbor, New Jersey, which I don't believe is attached to Six Flags Great Adventure. It might be. I don't know. They have a larger water play structure called Splash Island, and will have 7 new slides attached to it. These things are very fun for families. I don't like water parks, and we don't really have to talk about it much further than that unless you really want to, Eric.
Nope. I have no interest in talking about water park additions for children.
Okay. Well, again, capital investments are a good thing, and we are excited that Six Flags is making capital investments in some of their water parks. Good for them. We're very happy for them, and I think there might be another one somewhere in this long press release. Is there a Hurricane Harbor? There's like a Hurricane Harbor in
We just
Mexico.
said that we don't want to talk about water park expansions, Andrew.
Okay,
Where are you looking for more water park stuff to talk about?
Fair. I'm sorry. All right. Well,
come on, let's get to the thing I'm most excited about, Andrew.
All right. Not quite. Unless we're talking about the animals at one of your home parks, Six Flags Discovery Kingdom.
That's not what I'm most excited about, but we can talk about that. So yeah, Six Flags Discovery Kingdom seems to be doing a addition or redo of some of their existing animal encounters. They talk about something called the Rainforest Trail, which talks about it's hard to tell from press releases exactly like what is new and what is existing. It talks about like close encounters with certain animal. I think they mentioned sloths, and I mentioned butterflies, which made me think, they have an existing butterfly house, a popular zoo exhibit, right? And so like, maybe they're redoing the butterfly house as part of the Rainforest Trail. But they also talk about upgrades to the shark experience, which is something that, man, I even remember when it was like new at Six Flags Discovery Kingdom, may have even been before it was Six Flags. It was like they basically I think it was actually maybe one of the first, like, you stand on like a moving walkway that's under where the tank goes above you, and so you can see the sharks all around you. And so they're doing upgrades to that. They sounded like including some like lighting and projection and video stuff to sort of go along with that experience. So modernizing the shark experience. What was hard to tell is like how, if these things are actually being connected some way. They're not actually that close to each other in the park. We did not get an updated map of like where all these things are going. So these might be separate experiences that are both happening at the same time as just a general upgrade to all of the animal exhibits, unclear so far. Then they also mentioned a bunch of sort of like really new animal experience kind of, I'm guessing like upcharge, behind the scenes kind of things, stuff that they already have, similar to like swimming with dolphins and that kind of thing, as well as like other behind the scene. I think the one they're calling the Wildlife Adventure Tour, the private tour backstage. One of the things they're adding to the shark exhibit is Sharks in the Dark, where you can sleep basically stay overnight in the shark exhibit. So I mentioned a bunch of these sorts of new or upgraded animal encounters, which is something that Discovery Kingdom still offers as sort of a unique offering among most regional theme parks, of having pretty extensive animal exhibits. Some that they seemed to be downsizing a few years ago, but then last year they opened Sidewinder Safari, their new spinning mouse coaster that came with a new sort of reptile and snake exhibit as part of the coaster, which is actually, when we previewed it back in a little less than a year ago, like the new snake exhibit was neat and had a bunch of animals that I know they had but did not have places to have on display all the time, so being able to show more of their animals regularly. And so in some ways it's nice that the park is still paying attention to that aspect of it, since previously they'd been doing more it's sort of been adding rides to the sort of front of the park where all the DC stuff is, Joker, RMC, and then like the Wonder Woman spinning disc thing and all of those. And so I don't remember the names for all of these flat rides.
There's a good chance it's Golden Lasso, I think.
It is Golden. Yes, it is Wonder Woman Golden. It is
Lasso of Truth or something like that.
It's Golden. Oh, nah, I think it's Golden Lasso, but I'm not sure. Anyways, they've been doing lots of sort of ride investments, kind of cramming things into the front of the park. Batman, I guess, was actually maybe the most recent of those. And then now sort of focusing on the back of the park with Sidewinder Safari last year, and now the animal exhibits. So it's nice to see them doing some stuff. And I do know, talking to the staff last year at the Sidewinder Safari opening, that it seemed like at least at that time, Six Flags was giving them a little more freedom to sort of do some of their own design on these things, which I think is partly what came with some of the design work around the snake exhibit and the entrance for Sidewinder Safari. And so maybe we'll get to see a little more of that.
Nice.
With Rainforest Trail as well.
Yeah. I want to really quick touch on one of these kind of animal encounters. There's one here called, I think, Paint and Create. And, Rachel, who wrote this kind of recap for us on Coaster101.com, we'll link in the show notes. But she said you can create a truly unique work of art with a dolphin or a penguin. And that just sounds fun. I don't know if the penguin and the dolphin are like going to paint alongside with you or like slap their fin or flipper on the canvas with some paint, but that just sounds fun. Yes. I don't know. Maybe it's just I've always wanted to meet a penguin.
Ah, well, there you go. Good opportunity. I'm curious as to like how much all of these things will cost, and then also like how popular they end up being for the park.
True.
But also it seems like, an easy ad for the park if they've already got basically facilities to this and already have the animals, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right?
Yeah. So it's a no-brainer for the park. Now we can talk about the thing that sounds the neatest of all of these announcements to me, though, right?
It is, but I think that's because we just don't know exactly what it is.
Confusing.
It is. So Six Flags New England, a park I visited for the first time late last year, the thrill capital of New England, showcases the latest in animatronic technology with Dino Offroad Adventure.
This is in quotes, right? This is from the press release.
This is from the press release. It's not actually in quotes, but I am reading from the press release. Families can experience an unprecedented attraction that combines animatronic technology and modern ingenuity. Guests will embark on an off-road journey with life-size dinosaurs, immersive environments, cutting-edge audio, interactive guides, and educational elements. Sold. I'm in. Like Six Flags New England, you had me at Dinosaur Offroad Adventure. You didn't even have to tell me of the different, you can see Tyrannosaurus Rex, Dilophosaurus, Maiasaura, Pachycephalosaur. I mean, these are all could be made up dinosaur names for all I know.
Dinosaurs are so different from when we were kids.
Yeah, it was like Velociraptor, Triceratops, Stegosaurus, Tyrannosaurus. That's it. And now you got you reach into the Scrabble bag, end it with Saurus, and you've got a dinosaur name.
Yeah, I mean, my reaction, same as you reading this, I was like, life-size animatronic dinosaurs, immersive environment, Six Flags. What's going on here? We also, before we started recording, we were sitting here trying to look at the images of these and try and figure out what this actually is. Because it seems like, and there's basically as often the case, not the highest quality of renderings, showing kind of like a path with dinosaurs and trees around it, and that's about it. And so it's like it's mentions of family safari style vehicle family ride, so presumably it's in some kind of vehicle. And then I think we both had the thought of, well, the like easiest thing would maybe be if they already have like an antique car kind of ride of like, if you've got an antique car ride, you could stick dinosaurs along and suddenly you would have the best antique car ride.
This is true.
Like, turn the cars into Jeeps and put a dinosaur animatronic. You've got the best one that exists. But then we were also talking about like, oh, because could it be some there's no rail in the renderings, which is probably just a not worth rendering the rail, but like, oh, is there some more interesting vehicle going on here that they're just not actually talking about, which would be a little weird.
Yeah, I had a fleeting thought that I think quickly went away once I realized who we were dealing with here. Back in 2017, Dynamic Attractions had their off-road dark ride vehicle. I don't know what the exact name of this thing was called, but it was, again, 6 years ago at this point. They demoed it at IAPA. It kind of was a loosely themed to G.I. Joe, but it was this trackless off-road vehicle that, could interact with terrain and things like that. This would be really cool. I'm not saying it's this. I don't think it's this. Because for this attraction, which I'm assuming is they scrounged up every dinosaur they could from the former Cedar Fair Dinosaurs Alive attractions. They pieced them together. They got the good ones, the ones where the latex was still good and the arms were still attached. They got a great bulk deal on these. And they've got an antique car ride or a walking path or something. I have no idea where in the park this is going to go. I'm trying to recollect my speed run through the park this past October, and I can't think of where a dinosaur attraction would go. And I know Shane is he's a New England guy. Six Flags New England is his home park. We'll have to get him and talk to him about this eventually.
Yeah, we're the wrong two people to talk about anything Six Flags New England. I have never been there.
It's a fun park. I didn't fit on Wicked Cyclone or Superman, which are probably the park's two best coasters. So that was a strike in my book. And but other than that, it was a Six Flags day, and that was the nicest thing I can say about it.
Now, will you make an effort to go back to experience this animatronic dinosaur outdoor dark ride kind of thing?
Once I can guarantee I fit in Wicked Cyclone, yes.
The dinosaurs aren't enough to bring you by themselves.
Again, I live about 30 minutes from Carowinds, and Carowinds had Dinosaurs Alive, and I walked through there twice in my entire time of visiting the park.
You don't have to walk on this one, though.
You present a really valid argument. I'm going to have to rethink my plans to go back to the Northeast and check out the Dinosaur Safari Off-Road Adventure, whatever this is called. This thing is
Dino Off-Road Adventure.
Dino Off-Road Adventure. See, they couldn't. It even stole the logo from Dinosaurs Alive and the concept art. It looks the same. It's that same kind of Jurassic Park, Jurassic World font.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what they're really stealing the logo from. We're sort of joking here, although I do think this is the most interesting of all of these announcements. Like, we already kind of knew about the Skables. Obviously, Aquaman is not new. And this is like, I'm Six Flags ever done something like this? Like, I'm just like, what? This is so. It's not DC themed. It's got animatronics. Like, this is very unusual.
This is Monster Mansion for a new generation.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm very curious to learn. Of all of these, I'm curious to learn more about this one more so than any of the other attractions. The other attractions, I can tell what they are from the one paragraph press release. This is like, I want to learn more.
I love it. I'm with you. I completely agree. But yeah, the last thing I really want to touch on very quickly is, and this was kind of buried in the press release, but Six Flags Fiesta Texas is debuting an esports gaming arena, which to me, I know Cedar Point is doing something similar with their Sportsplex. I think their plans originally have an esports arena attached to it. And I know esports is a really fast growing platform in sports, assuming you can call it that. I mean, it is competition based and things like that. So good on Six Flags Fiesta Texas for kind of um, attaching to the trend. I mean, this is going to be 5,000 square feet, going to have 50 custom built game PC stations for gaming, 5 console stations with the newest next gen consoles, and a live esports stage. And I this is something to me that I think ties in well with a theme park. It's you've got that kind of escape from reality that comes with both video games and theme parks, and I think it's a nice tie-in. And Six Flags Fiesta Texas, although I've never been there, Eric, you went there earlier
Yeah,
this year,
last summer.
right? Or last summer. Like, to me, it just seems like the anti Six Flags park, like, or the blue ribbon Six Flags park. Basically, it's like the least Six Flags of the Six Flags.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I was going through it pretty quickly. I guess it was actually in like September. But it was sort of I think an easy way to look at it is if you look at the names and theming of their roller coasters, they have a very small number of DC roller coasters and then lots that are way more detailed in their theming and like more sort of unique in their theming and stuff like that. And so I think that is true that they seem to sort of, they can do a few things that are different from most Six Flags parks.
Yeah, well, and then I mean, even their DC themed roller coaster, like Wonder Woman, Golden Lasso, comes to mind, and that's super highly themed, which is good for them. I'm happy that Jeffrey Siebert, if you're listening, we would love to have you on the podcast to talk about all the really cool things happening at Six Flags Fiesta Texas, Sketty Bowl, the esports arena. Everything you guys do there, it seems to turn to gold. So congratulations to you, and congratulations to everybody at the Six Flags chain. If your park is not getting something, maybe next year it will. That's the good news.
I do think it's sort of interesting that some of the parks that there wasn't anything in these announcements are some of their biggest parks. Like, I mean, Great Adventure, I guess there's sort of the water park, depending on how much that's attached. But Great Adventure, Great America in Chicago, nothing in here, Magic Mountain, which I would think those are maybe not the 3 biggest, but certainly 3 of the biggest. No announcements on those, so maybe those have something bigger coming next year because they might be more capital intensive. I think the other thing we can touch on very, very quickly is that Six Flags did announce continuing more events throughout the year. I think at almost all of the parks, if not all of them, including adding some new ones. And you can tell that Six Flags is now maybe a few years behind other parks and chains, but like adding a bunch of food events to the year. Some like Flavors of the World event that are adding a during spring break, which I assume is coming up soon, adding basically a like Halloween haunt or Fright Fest, whatever Six Flags calls it, to they're calling it Scream Break. And so like haunted houses in the spring, which is that's always a very popular event for lots of amusement park fans. Mentioned Oktoberfest event, which I think they did at least at some parks last fall, bringing that back. So it's another thing of like, Six Flags is now jumping onto that that pattern of or the popularity of food events and annual events, which is also, again, if we like from a park point of view of like, what's a good way to get people into the park without needing to necessarily spend the millions of dollars you need on a new ride. Makes sense that like, if you can set up an event and bring pass holders or convince people like, you should get are they passes or they're not memberships anymore, they're passes again, something like that, of like, get people to buy a pass because see like, I want to go to these 2 events throughout the year. That makes sense for me to get the pass. So there's new stuff coming into parks that even didn't get a new ride announcement.
Yes, so it's a good time right now. I think we're finally hitting that point where it's officially post-COVID. We've had a couple of full operating seasons since that year of the shutdown where everything, went to hell in a handbasket. So I think we're getting on a more normal cycle. I don't think Six Flags is ever going to get back to the every park gets something every year. But again, as I've said throughout this show, capital investments are a good thing, and it means that, people are still continuing to visit these parks because it means the parks want to expand.
I think I feel like maybe we've talked about this, or at least talked about it with maybe other people from Coaster101, that the probably the every park needs to get something every year was not a good policy for getting big and interesting things, because it was sort of like, oh, you have to spread it. You get X dollars for capital expenditure. You have to spread it around. Whereas like, oh, if you pick and choose a few parks each year, then maybe they can get something more interesting or more exciting. And maybe they get something like, oh, this is going to be the only park that gets this ride, or one of two parks that gets this ride in the case of the Pescetti Bowl.
Yes. So the race is on for Fiesta Texas and over Georgia. Who's going to open the first ever family racing spaghetti bowl coaster? How did I mess that up?
You said correctly. Come on, Andrew.
The Pescetti Bowl coaster. I don't know who's going to get the first one, but
maybe they'll schedule it for the exact same day so they can both say that they had the first.
we gotta get our numbers up in Georgia and Texas then, because we got to cover both those events. So, well, that's going to do it for this week's episode of the Coaster101 podcast. Head to coaster101.com to learn all about these new Six Flags editions. We touched on a couple other articles during the show. One I didn't touch on, when we talked about Six Flags Discovery Kingdom, there was a list of 15 amusement parks and zoos where you can get both your animal and roller coaster fix. So be sure to go check that out. If you're on social media, so are we. We are at Coaster101, anywhere you can consume the platform. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Twitter when it's not broken. Just find us. Just search Coaster101 on any of those platforms. You'll find us. If you're listening, make sure you're liking, rating, reviewing, subscribing, giving us 5-star ratings on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Love reading reviews. We haven't gotten any new reviews in a while, so help us out. Give us a review. And thanks, as always, to JMMD Entertainment for our theme music. Eric, it's going to be sooner than 6 months the next time I have you back on the show. So looking forward to that. Andrew.
I'm happy to do it.
I love it. And we will talk to y'all again soon.
Bye.